Welcome to Parasortium. Today we're talking with our new friend Hunter Bowles, a folklorist and historian specializing in ancient weapons. Though his work at the museum in Franklin, Kentucky has him doing more than his specialty. Join us for our discussion about the history of Simpson County and the museum. Welcome to the show, Hunter. It's nice to have you on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. My name is Hunter Bowles. I am currently working at the Simpson County Historical Society. I help to manage the collection there, as well as do education tours, things like that. I'm a historian as well as a anthropologist and folklorist. So I kind of run the gambit on history and then into the weird little small bits of history here and there. Yeah, that's at least me. The society, the historical society has been open since 1959, and they have been kind of collecting Franklin's history since then. It really started more as a genealogical um, research site, so to basically help make family trees, do family histories, things like that. And as we've kind of changed and evolved, as you've seen, we are now a museum. We have two historic buildings that we get to utilize and fill up with a bunch of stuff that's been donated from our community and the surrounding areas.
Excellent. Um, so the genealogical side of the archives, can you tell us a little bit about that and how someone can access it?
Yeah, so our archives is a result of a lot of volunteer work. Like I said, since '59, we've had just there's no telling how many volunteers come in and out, and whether that's for a small time, maybe a week doing personal research and then giving us what they collected, up to people that have been there for years, that have just been kind of helping us compile and do different collections. And right now, we are trying to digitize our our vast genealogical records and family trees. That is a very slow process. So the only way to access our archives at the moment is to be there physically.
Yeah.
So we'll have a local server that you can pull stuff, pull pictures out of, things like that, as well as access to some other historical websites, like Ancestry and things like that, that help people to do those researches or do that research as well.
Excellent. Um, have have you found anything interesting while digitizing uh the records?
They found plenty. I mean, I do a little bit less on the paper end, unless we get like a big collection in, and then I help out with a lot of that. Um, we very recently we had a gentleman by the name of Thomas Moody pass in town, and he had a very big collection of history, paper, of books, letters, just kind of research he had done. We ended up getting like 8 or 9 bankers boxes just full to the brim of books and papers and pictures. So we were going through tintypes. So we have some tintypes in there from his family,
Mhm.
which are always, I love tintypes, just being able to see that technology at the time, putting a photograph on a small sheet of metal is cool.
That's
And they hold up decently well if they're stored well.
mhm.
Um, we got one letter that was always great. It's heartbreaking to see because it was during World War One, and it was this gentleman in World War One that was trying to find someone else from his hometown. He had heard that he was from Franklin,
Yeah.
trying to find this guy. He's like, hey, we've kind of crossed paths here and there. Our units have been close. Like, I just want to see you, chat, see how like home is doing.
Mhm.
And then the next to that picture, he sent that in like 19 whatever it was like the last little bit of like 1911, I think, if
Okay.
not that, maybe 19. But anyway, um,
just before the end of the war.
just before the end of the war, and he had passed the next month. He was killed in action in the next month. They had his records with that associated with it, and it's powerful to see, and it's again hard to see, but it's like one individual person was alive, like obviously trying to do stuff with his life while in the military. He's wanting to find this guy and just talk with him about home. And it was a really cool artifact to find, if not a very heartbreaking artifact to find as well. There's a lot of that.
There's artwork and inscriptions on the walls in the jailhouse. Can you share a little bit about that and information on it?
Yeah, sure. So the inscriptions and then the artwork that we have are left over from Confederate prisoners that were held at the jail. Um, so Kentucky didn't join either side during the Civil War. We were considered a border state. So politically, it didn't help us either side to join either way.
Yeah.
So we did our best to stay neutral, as it were. Um, but we were pretty heavily under control of the Union. We had a lot. I mean, it did split. So pretty much, if you're really closer to the South, you would most of the times go South. If you're closer to the North, you would support the Union. Not always, but kind of generally. So the Confederates were pretty active in our area. Bowling Green, which is about 30 minutes north of us, that was the Confederate state capital of Kentucky. The Confederates held that for a short period of time. The Union did not care for that. So they came in, they pushed the Confederates out of Bowling Green, and then they kept moving south. So they passed through Franklin, and then they had captured some prisoners on the way on that push, and they housed it at our local jail. So upstairs in the jailhouse you'd been into, the first jail, we have charcoal drawings of high-ranking officers from the Confederacy, drawn in charcoal or pencils possibly, but it's one of the two, as well as some writings on like the conditions of the jail, kind of what they're expecting, what they're living in. Um, One guy I think wrote about like he's going to be shipped out in a couple days, going north, being shipped north to a camp, um, as well as just kind of like doodles almost. So I mean, and I guess they were there for a long enough time, but they are good enough drawings that we can at least associate who they are. Some have some pretty distinctive features. We have one gentleman, it's a General Beauregard, if I'm not mistaken, had a very distinct curled mustache that was captured in one of the paintings or one of the drawings pretty well, so we could
Also,
at least associate it with him.
what are mule days and when are they usually held?
So Mule Days were an event held in Franklin from the late 1930s to the early 40s. It basically stopped during World War II.
Okay.
It was a social event. Um, People would really just get together and swap, buy, and trade mules. It's honestly kind of like a antique farm machinery show, where now people go out and they'll buy tractors and whatever they need. Same thing. It's just that they would need to buy mules. So it was also at the time that bigger social or an event like this would be a big deal, especially for a small town. So a lot of times there were parades, there were beauty pageants. I think it was called the Mule Day Queen. I can't remember exactly what, like if you won the pageant, that's what you were called. You would show off your mules, and they would have different, like pulls and things like that. Um, so typically, if I'm not mistaken, it would be, I think summertime would be about the time they would have it. Now that don't quote me on that one. The videos that we've seen, we have one original film from that time, 1939, whenever it was going on. Uh, and we have a video or a film of our square whenever the Mule Days was going. So, and it had like, I think they said like 3,000 mules uh, came in, and however many people associated with it, it was 5 or 6 thousand people there too. Which I mean, you think at the time that's a, I mean, even now still that's a big to do
Yeah.
especially for a small town. I mean, however much we can support. Um, but we ended that with World War II, and it didn't pick back up.
Okay.
We didn't do that. So there are still two towns in our area that do. Madisonville, Kentucky, they still have one, and then Columbia, Tennessee, has one as well. Those are the only two that are in the area that I could still find that do a mule days. So it's
That's
going away, but I mean we don't use mules as much. A lot of farms or some farms will have like one or two just kind of
yeah.
kicking around. I mean they're fun. They do good work still. I mean they're good strong animals that can get in places that some tractors can't.
It's true. Franklin Museum has historical artifacts for everyday life of the past. Why is it important to preserve these objects and share them with the greater public?
Well, you think about the big ticket items, they always like spring to mind when everyone is thinking about things to preserve. Like the big pieces, they want to make sure those are there because they are big. They serve an important purpose, and a lot of times they're symbolic of that time period. But I've always said that the everyday items are equally important, if not more important, because that's what the everyday person interacted with more.
Mhm.
Um, they kind of give a glimpse into the past through a lens that the average person can really connect with. Like one of my favorite from history is the E.A. Nasser the complaint tablets. Have you ever heard about the complaint tablets from like 1750 BCE?
I think I've heard something about that.
You may have heard the story. It's a collection of clay tablets from a copper salesman named E.A. Nasser.
Mhm.
Um, and he collected these, and there are all these people complaining to him about like selling him low quality copper or like overcharging stuff. It's literally like the like Yelp reviews at the time, but like 1750 BCE, and he kept them all, which is really funny. That he's like, these are hilarious, so I'm keeping these. So now we have, I think they're in Sanskrit. Now we have like this collection of Sanskrit that did help us also learn how everyday people talked, like
Mhm.
how like these, because these aren't formal, these aren't like governmental papers. They're just yelling at this guy because he sold him bad copper,
Mhm.
and and I always think those are funny, and that's the small items that if you see those preserved, well, everyone's had a bad experience or has seen like bad reviews, and it's like that's a connecting point across like multiple generations. Like maybe a Nasser was kind of just a jerk.
Oh, one star Yelp reviews from 1700s.
took the time. So 1750 BCE. So even like
Wow, like
early, yeah.
years ago.
So it was because it's all on clay tablets. So imagine taking the time to have a clay tablet and write it in Sanskrit and then still give it to this guy as a complaint.
That takes dedication right
It's
there.
a lot. Yeah, he must have not. He must have pissed off a lot of people because he had like there's like six or seven of them in the collection. I was like, that's awesome.
Oh, oh man, that's great. And
It's
and
a it's just a fun part.
and you learn how people formed thoughts back then
Right.
because like when you're pissed off, it's very hard to think in the first place. But if you're pissed off enough that you take the time to write out a clay tablet, that's saying something.
Some genuine anger. It's not just like in the moment yelling at somebody. That's going home, getting your clay tablet, writing it out, and handing it back to this guy.
Amazing. Oh,
But it's there's a piece that I always there was an interview done at the I think it's the National Infantry Museum um in in the States here, talking about memory binders on exhibits. So it's like small things that connect a person to a memory. And it doesn't always have to be. So what it was in the infantry museum that a lot of people came in and talked about that they loved was these any of the guys in the infantry were going through and they had a Humvee on display, but in the window, like jammed near the console, was a dip bottle. Uh, and so like spit like tobacco, and
Yep.
they had it jammed in the front, and so many of the guys were like, "That's perfect," because that's exactly where we stuck it, and it had the Arabic writing on it. It was like I think it was like a Pepsi bottle, but they'd actually bought it from over in the Middle East so that it was the same writing, whatever they used, like, whatever bottle it was. They're
Yep.
like, that's exactly right. That's perfect. And it was like, well, yeah, that's a daily item, and that's one of those memory binders that
Yep.
they connected with immediately. I mean, how many people in the armed services, especially in infantry, dip because you
Yep.
don't want to
Yep.
smoke out in the middle of.
Yep. Yep.
So
Give
I was like, that's
your
and they loved that, and I was like, that's a cool small thing to do that different people will relate to.
awesome. Um, yeah, little things. It's the little things that pique people's interest.
Yes.
Um, little, and it's sometimes really obscure little details like that. Like if you hadn't experienced it, you wouldn't say, "Hey, I know that. I did that." So, um, can you tell everyone a little bit about Octagon Hall?
Sure. So this was one part I had to do some research on because I knew some of uh the high points of the Octagon Hall, but I got to do a little bit deeper digging on this. So this was fun for me. So the Octagon Hall was originally built by Andrew Jackson Caldwell in 1847, and it was finished in 1859. So it took some time to build it. But it was a family residence. So it was for his family, the Caldwell family, made out of local timber as well as handmade bricks. So it was all from around the area.
Yeah.
It is one of, if not the only surviving octagonal house in Kentucky. And it was used, like I said, I mean, obviously you've seen it still in use,
Yeah.
so it's around. But it was that family residence until the Civil War. When the Civil War came around, both sides claimed this building. It was like an observation post. It was a camp during the Civil War, and then a hospital as well. So it was kind of pushed back and forth. The Confederates had it first, and then the Union again came in and kicked them out. Um, Several soldiers did have died on the grounds there. They actually have found, um, actually, Billy helped out find some of the graves in the back with our GPR unit. I think they said that he found about 8 or so. Um, and then allegedly, depending on how you swing, it is pretty haunted. We've had, I mean, obviously with the Civil War, deaths that have been there, as well as some unfortunate happenings with one of the daughters of the Caldwell family that was there. She also passed. Um, but it's had, I think, upwards of 250, maybe 300 like paranormal teams go in and just check it out. Um, just kind of go and they'd stay the night or they'd be there for the evening. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's a really cool spot. It's a cool local museum that does a lot of the Civil War history. They usually do all out for Halloween too, so it's a good time.
How seismically active is the Franklin area?
I don't think we have too many. We are close to, so there's a fault line around the Mississippi River, and I don't know my fault lines too well. But there's one, the most notable one that's been in this area was like 1800s, and it was, if you ever look it up, it's the earthquake that made the Mississippi River run backwards.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
so that fault line I think is the closest to us. but it is not a terribly active um, fault. Is that kind of answer your question? Because I don't know a ton about
Yeah.
about that. We
Uh,
have a lot of caves. I know a little bit about the bedrock there, but that's all I got.
ca- caves the caves are limestone, aren't they? A lot of them.
Yes, that's our bedrock is limestone. So we were a shallow temperate sea way back, and then that's kind of what made limestone is a lot of mix in of
So,
fossils and small items. Yeah.
um, part of the research that we do is on tectonic strain theory,
Okay.
which, if you followed any of Michael Persinger's work, he created what they call the God helmet, and they use that
Okay.
for investigations at some ways. But it technically makes you have an outer body experience and that sort of thing. But what he was actually looking at is the effects of EMF given off from fault lines on the brain and brain physiology. And
Okay.
and so what we've found um, is a lot of like ghost activity happens around fault lines and waterways where there's high EMF given off. And in reality, a lot of our homes, uh, particularly the older buildings, the electricity was less insulated, and so it gave off a hell of a lot more EMF and can cause people to have paranormal experiences, even though there's nothing paranormal there. It's just your brain is being affected by the electromagnetic frequencies, which are basically being pumped out, and infrasound for caves is another thing because
Okay.
the movement of water through caves can cause a little bit of infrasound, and infrasound can affect the brain in a similar way to tectonic uh, uh, emissions. Are you able to tell us a little bit about the indigenous that once lived in the area?
Sure. I'll give a few disclaimers here. This isn't like my main area of study.
Mhm.
I've done some research on it, but it's here and there. I don't claim to be an expert on this. And then my pronunciation uh, on at least one tribe specifically, I'm not 100% sure on. So that's my two.
All right.
Um, but yes, so there were several larger tribes, or there were several tribes centered in Kentucky. Um, so we have Shawnee and Cherokee, as well as Chickasaw, Yuchi, and then Maso Masopelia. So those are the main tribes. Now those were in the historical period. They were associated with a lot of the writings that were throughout.
Mhm.
um, Predominantly Cherokee, in our area at least, was predominantly Cherokee. The farther north into Kentucky you go, I believe it switches over to Shawnee.
Yeah.
But then there's also some traveling tribes that went through, or kind of as maps change. So sometimes like Osage would kind of bleed over. There'd be some Osage that would come into the area. Um, so it wasn't like a hard and fast list. It kind of flows and fluctuates. Um, Now, throughout the Mississippian period, there are multiple groups. It breaks down into a lot of smaller groups that all did eventually come together to be some of the larger tribes.
Yeah.
But they were here. We have records of several cities being built, predominantly around waterways. Um, as well as a few burial mounds that you're able to find pretty easily throughout. And even, I don't know, while you were traveling through, did you get to go to Mammoth Cave?
Yes.
Yes. So Mammoth has a native burial in the cave. So they don't, obviously, they don't take anybody back there. It is a sealed off location in the cave that only a few folks know about. Um, I happen to know some of the rangers that work at Mammoth, so they were telling me about this. But it was two or three individuals buried in the cave in a chamber there. Um, but that's all that I know. So they were here. Obviously, they had great importance on the area they were in. They were here for a long time. They had burials here until things start getting kind of muddled with the Trail of Tears.
Yeah,
A lot were pushed west. A lot of our tribes were pushed out
yeah,
of Kentucky, um, and a lot of um, I guess just racist rhetoric was kind of started with Kentucky.
yeah,
One of the biggest ones, and it's not to anyone's fault today that they still believe it, 'cause it's just what they've been taught. But a lot of them would say that Kentucky was never inhabited; it was hunting grounds, and that was all that it was ever used for. And that was started whenever they were trying to get more settlers to stay in Kentucky.
yeah,
They're like, no, this land isn't used. No one uses this. You can take it. You can, set up farms, do whatever you want to do. It's more palatable for people at the time to be told that that land isn't being used as opposed to, oh, we kicked everybody off this land. Now you can take it. And it
exactly.
doesn't feel as good. So I'm sure that's probably how that kind of legend got started. And it's still, like I said, still believed today. I believed it for the longest time until college, until took up some indigenous studies class in college. Um, and it was the first time that I ever really thought about it. Like one of my professors, I asked about it. I was like, okay, what's up with this? Like that doesn't sound right. And he's sitting there's like, okay, well, sure, we'll think about it. Why would all of this land go unused besides hunting? He's like, and what he always heard is there's the Appalachian Mountains to the east. There's the Mississippi on the west. So that it's supposedly like hard to get into. But he's like, no, it's not. Like, you come through the river system. You use the river system to get
Yeah,
here. And I was like, so, it's a lot of unlearning that some folks get to do. And I'm more than happy to do that in a positive way, just because a lot of people like me kind of need that moment to be like, oh, no, that doesn't make any sense at all.
yeah, yeah. Well,
So we have a varied native history in Kentucky.
uh, people doing anthropology and archaeological uh, research have found that humans do not stay stagnant. They come into the area, they move out of the area, and history is actually a huge mess of movement.
Yes.
And
Yes, it
like
is.
uh last night we were talking to a friend and uh the movement of the Norse people from Europe to Canada, she didn't know anything about that.
Mm.
Uh a lot of people don't. Norse people came to the West over 1,000 years ago.
I did a lot of actually when I was doing my folklore, my graduate schooling, I did a lot of work on Norse culture. I just found it interesting, and I still do the small bits. So I did material culture, a lot of time focused on their weaponry.
Yeah,
And but yeah, like some of the first ones that were here, we have evidence that they traded with like native groups and all these different things. And it's like we can't just ignore that. They were here way before Columbus, and
yeah.
Columbus was,
Bit of history.
yeah, it's all like connected too, because that makes me think. I don't know if you like the lost colony of Roanoke in the States. Uh, like they they're always talking about, they disappeared because they had this harsh winter, and like no one knows where they went except they wrote where they went on a tree. There's Croatoan,
Yeah,
and which is the name of one of the tribes in the area, but they're like, what happened? We don't really know. They, of course, a lot of it started like we think the Croatoans like killed them, whatever. And then whenever you start looking into the tribe, they have a lot of very similar like European features mixed into the tribe now, where like whenever the next group came back in, it's like, oh, that kid's got blue eyes, or that kid's got blonde hair, or this other stuff. It's like, nah, they're not there. I'm like, okay, they were.
they were. The Montel UFO incident. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So Captain Thomas Mantell Jr. He was born in Franklin. Now his records say he never lived in Franklin. He was born here,
Hmm.
and then he lived in Louisville.
Okay.
He was then he entered into the armed services. I'm not sure if he volunteered or was drafted, but he became a fighter pilot for the Army Air Corps, which went on to become the Air Force
Mhm.
during World War II. And he was a decorated fighter pilot, survived through the war, and after the war, he joined the Kentucky Air National Guard. So just kind of standard procedure. A lot of times, after get out, it's a pretty similar job, some pretty similar occupation to what he was doing.
Yeah.
So he was conducting training and of the day of the incident, we'll say, and ferrying a flight of P-51s, I think back to Louisville, if I'm not mistaken. But they were transferring some planes, and he was the lead pilot on that. It was January 7th, 1948. He was directed by his controller on the ground that there was basically they had spotted a unidentified flying object on the radar. They didn't know what it was. They didn't know there wasn't anything planned to be in that area. So they sent him to investigate. So during this pursuit, it ended up being pretty dark. I mean, it ended up going to nighttime,
Okay.
uh, and he they lost track of Mantell. He was during or having radio contact with them, and suddenly just kind of dropped off. They didn't really have anything else after that. And then the next day, actually, some locals said they heard it from that evening. They heard a crash, and then the next day they found his plane with him inside crashed at a local farm. So he had gone down during that. Now, whether who's to say what happened? My best guess is a P-51 with no radar systems flying at night probably just got confused or disoriented, anything like that. Um, he was the first flight casualty, I believe, out of the Kentucky Air National Guard. So they still have some stuff dedicated to him at the at that those different organizations. But yeah, that's Captain Mantell. So at our museum, we have a piece of the plane. We have some of the newspapers with the images of the wreckage. Um, I believe we have one of his original flight caps, and then we actually have been featured a couple times uh, on like Sci-Fi or a Discovery Channel. I think did a brief snippet, maybe 15, 20 minutes, talking about that as well. But that's it. He never lived in Franklin. He was born in Franklin, and he passed in Franklin.
Began there and he ended there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, so the fact that they saw something on the radar and sent him to investigate had to have been something significant. Um, and the loss of radio contact, that's kind of stereotypical of UFO incidents
Hmm.
because electronic equipment tends to go awry with certain experiences. And um, did he ever describe? Do you know if he ever described what he was chasing?
I don't know. So he had. So I'm trying to think where the radio cuts out because he was talking about. I think he remembers seeing lights of
Yeah.
some kind, and then he actually asked to come back to base to rearm his plane because he was not flying an armed plane. He was just
He was
ferrying an
just
empty.
escorting, yeah.
Yeah, he was just flying it. I think he was like transferring it and doing different patrols. Um, but he asked to come back and arm his plane. Um, so I don't really that we don't at least not that I know of. There may be some more in-depth descriptions, um, but I honestly I need to look at the radio records and see what we have because they have it. We have all of it. I didn't think to check on that.
It it's a lot. It's a lot. And these interviews we go over so much, and that's one incident, one piece of snippet of history in the grand scheme of things. And but what s- what people really get caught on is the UFO incidents, particularly right now because of disclosure and all of the recent activity with drones and whatnot. Um, a lot a lot of stuff around the Uinta Basin, like they flew experimental aircraft over that location for years and years, and so a lot of UFO incidents are basically military aircraft flying back and forth, testing
Yeah,
out the systems and whatnot. I'm wondering if this is 1948, around that time in Canada, we were starting to develop the Aero uh, materials and doing experiments with different jet engines at that or different
right.
uh, rudimentary jet engines at that time. Um, and it could have been one of our craft that got disorientated and went south. I'm
Yeah,
wondering
I'm
if it could have been
that would have
that.
been a far shot. I mean, it was in
Yeah.
Kentucky, so. But I'm also thinking. I'm trying to think. Whenever we developed our first jet here, of course we were beat to the punch by the Germans.
Yeah.
I can't remember what our first one was. I couldn't say off the top of my head what it was, but I mean that does happen a lot with like the Army or like the experimental aircraft, especially like Area 51
Yeah.
for us. Uh, that's all I mean. And Dad was Air Force, and anytime they're talking about Area 51, he's like, that's just where they try the new planes out. It's like that's all it is. Corey, he doesn't know for sure, but it's like you think about looking at like the descriptions of some of the UFOs versus some of the planes that we were trying out. Like the B-2 Spirit, for one, is like the biggest one that people talk about. Is like that's exactly what they're talking about whenever they talk about that kind of bulbous and it's
Yeah.
triangular shaped. It's like, yeah, it's a Spirit. Like that's not.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would think that's a lot of it. It's these experimental things that the public doesn't know about yet, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure with Mantell because and again, I didn't look at the descriptions there. I don't know what he talked about it looking like, but that might be interesting to see if it matches with anything.
Yeah. What is your favorite story about Franklin?
Hmm. Short of some like, family history, which one small bit of family history Dad always talks about, he was still alive whenever they were doing his uncle at the time, so my great uncle was still running and making moonshine. So he distinctly remembers some of the revenuers blowing up his uncle's still uh, as a way to stop that. So he's like, no, I remember it exactly. It's like they came down, they went to the still, they found his still, they put a stick of dynamite in the thump keg, and they left.
Boom.
So that's a short bit. That's the local my family history, and I always think that's pretty funny.
That's awesome.
Um, and then from our museum, one of the favorite stories that I found in there is we have an old dueling grounds in Franklin. I always love the I'll say I love it. It's a pretty rough practice, but it is a cool history to have of dueling in Kentucky. So we were one of the last states in the region to outlaw it.
Okay.
So if anyone had any kind of problems, they would they'd have a duel in Kentucky, and then they would leave. That's how it was. It was legal at the time to do that.
Yep.
One of our most notable, Sam Houston, came to Franklin and engaged in a duel with a General William White over some kind of issue. I don't know. They had gotten into some words apparently, and it insulted each other. So they decided to come to Franklin. They came up, they engaged in a duel. Sam Houston shot William White, they said, in the upper thigh to like kind of the crotch, like the groin area.
Oh.
Um, he said that he lived, um, though probably with a limp for a while, if not for the rest of his life. But then Sam Houston went on to become like the only man that was governor of two states in in the United States.
Wow.
He's the governor of Tennessee and Texas, and who Houston, Texas is named after.
Awesome.
So he still continued to be a pretty notable guy and a government official. I mean, it's still the history of dueling and all of that is so interesting to me because it's weirdly linked with our state.
Yeah.
I mean, we have dueling ground in Franklin. We have dueling grounds distillery, and it's kind of like popular. I mean, it's a small newer distillery, but it's keeping that name, keeping the
Yeah.
name of the dueling grounds, and its name there. But it's even in our state constitution. Kentucky, you cannot hold, it can't be a public officer or an attorney if you have participated in a duel. And
Okay.
anytime they sign, they agree or they become an attorney, they have to sign a legal document that says they've never engaged in a duel. So
Wow.
it's still linked to our state history, and I kind of hope they keep that because that's a fun part for
It
us,
is.
and probably still a good rule to live by.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, dueling has i- it's been since at least medieval times that I know of. Like uh us guys were great for getting into fights and that. And a lot of times guys that dueled, if the other guy didn't die, they ended up friends afterwards.
yeah, they would solve their differences, or they would be willing enough to stand up for themselves. Was kind of the, and a lot of times, I mean, a lot of times, just depending on like the situation and who you knew, just showing up for the duel was enough. So, I mean, a lot of times you'd hear like they would shoot into the air or they would shoot at the ground, like just to show that they were willing to stand up for that.
Yeah.
But I mean, sometimes they really hate each other. They would shoot at each other. Yeah.
There's there's one Canadian prime minister that I forget his name. He was in the late 1800s, early 1900s. He got shot so close to his heart that the guy expected him to die, and he pulled out his own revolver and shot the guy that shot him, killed him. And this was when Canada was basically the same as the US. That way, it was very much a wild west at that
Yeah.
point in time. But he he's one of the only politicians in Canada that was shot and went on to do like 2 terms.
Oh wow. Yeah. Dueling is just such a, so like it was actually a popular thing in like World War I kind of time period, German fraternities and men's organizations to have saber dueling scars. So if you see a lot of pictures, they'll have like one big scar across their face, and that's what it was. And it was one. I mean, sometimes it was genuinely earned from a duel.
Yeah,
Other times they would get someone to scar them to make it look like they've been in a duel, so that they have that machismo, that macho, that
yeah.
you know, I did this. But most of the time they went to like a barber and they're like, "Hey, can you give me a dueling scar?" And he's like, "Sure." And he would just like slice it, clean it, and then that's what they would do. And it was
Wow.
just it was a cultural, like dueling is such a weird cultural niche um in a lot of different cultures. Like I mean, Kentucky didn't have that as much, but the saber dueling scars, you'll see them in World War I photos. Even one of the actually one of the founders of the American Folklore Society, who I'm a part of.
Yeah.
He had a dueling scar. He had like one, and it was he had earned it defending a child in a duel. Like it was his whole thing. It was like, that guy's cool.
Cool. That's
Like
awesome.
it's like sure. So it's just I don't know. It's small bits. Again, like you learn why guys in these like early 1900s had a lot of scars on their face. It wasn't just everyone was getting rough and tumble. Some guys were genuinely doing it for fashion.
Cool. That's something I didn't know at all. That they would do that. It was a fashion thing, but
Yeah, it was
it's
to
just neat.
again to be tough, especially like some of the German fraternity groups. You'd get like your buddy to hit you with a sword, you'd hit him with a sword kind of gently, and both have a scar out of it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Um, what's your favorite folklore of the Kentucky area, of your area or Kentucky?
Okay, I'll give two. One is more local, but I am really big into the bourbon culture in Kentucky. I mean, it's just it's a
Yeah.
I'm proud of it. It's cool. It's a good, unique Kentucky thing. Other people, other places have started to make bourbon and they name it bourbon, but
Mm,
you know, you can make bourbon and as long as you go through it's like 51% corn, it has to be unused white oak or unused oak barrels. You can match that description, but I mean, it's for me, it's got to be Kentucky.
yeah.
If it's not, it's just whiskey, but whatever. So I have a lot of that. I really like to see people into the culture. A lot of times they're pretty chill guys. They just want to like try new drinks and chat about them and whatever. Um, so also a good plug for our local distillery. Come down to Dueling Grounds. I want to see it thrive because it's nice.
Uh,
Um, and then more locally, and this is a local tradition. There's a place called Spray Paint Road. So I doubt you would have heard of Spray Paint Road when you're in there. It's only a local tradition.
yeah.
It's actual. Let's see, the road is actually called Coomer Road. It's just named after the family that lived on it,
Yeah.
Coomer Road. But everyone in town, if you say you're going out to spray paint, they know where you're going. It's going to be Coomer Road,
Yeah.
and it's a road that people go to spray paint it at. Like they would go, they would it was like a hangout spot. It's where a lot of the parties were. It's where you take a girl if you wanted to be alone. It's out in the sticks, and it's where everyone knows.
Yeah.
But you'd go, you'd spray paint your name, you'd draw a picture, whatever, um, and then that's kind of it. So like they actually have somewhere, I think it's on YouTube. They still had it. They have a professional photography company came in and did a drone coverage of the road because it's just a straight shot and it's just a straight shot of spray paint all the way down it, and
Awesome.
it's cool. I mean, it's like I said, names, pictures, whatever you do. It's where high school guys, like you're 16, whatever, you go out and smoke, or do whatever it is that high schoolers do whenever they go, want to be away from their parents.
Yeah.
So spray paint road's probably my favorite like local tradition. A lot of the old timers still know spray paint. A lot of the cops know spray paint, and they really genuinely don't care. I mean, most of the cops' names are out there on spray paint. So like, what are they gonna do?
Yeah.
But it's a cool local spot. I don't know how it started, but I mean, yeah, it's been there. I mean, it's kind of funny. It's almost like a coming of age too. Like you're only able to drive. We're gonna go out to spray paint. We're gonna do it. We're gonna put our name. My name's in gold out there somewhere. I've got gold spray paint.
Awesome.
But like my brother, whenever he comes back into town, he brought his kids, and he's like, I gotta get my kids' names on spray paint. So he he took them. It was like four kids out there to spray paint. And they all put their names on it, and they left. And they
Awesome.
came back and went. But I just always think it's funny. It's a cool, like I said, just a very small niche
Yeah.
thing that if you're not from Franklin, even if you move into Franklin,
You're
you're
not
not
gonna
maybe not know about spray paint, but if you're really from it, that's whenever you really know if you're a local or not. So if a local takes you out to spray paint, you're in.
awesome. Uh, what is the weirdest, oldest, and favorite object in the collection?
Oldest is besides some fossils and some of our native artifacts, which are hard to date. There, most of them are projectile points.
Yeah.
Um, Oldest that we have numbers on, we have a straight razor from the American Revolution. And we have the info associated with it. It has 1776 carved on the handle. So that's whenever it was used, and then we have kind of how it came to be in our collection. So they kept it since the Revolution. He was, I believe, in the Continental Army um, out east, and then as his family slowly moved west and west and west, they came to Franklin into the area, and we now have that razor. As well as the box that it came in, like a small wooden box that it was in.
Oh.
So that's our oldest. Like I said, besides some of the fossils and things that we kind of collected over the years, um, my favorite, and this is personal. My favorite personal item is there's a piano. There's a player piano in our collection.
Hmm.
It's functional. So a player piano is a player piano that plays itself.
Yeah.
You have paper reels that have holes in them. You put it into a reader on the piano, and as you paddle, the reader sees the holes in it, and it tells it which hammer to play.
Yeah.
And fully functional. I mean, songs, everything like that. But it was my grandfather's. So that one's my favorite again for
For
personal
personal
reasons. I
reasons.
I, I love that item. He helped build it. He repaired and built pianos. So that was his, and he'd fixed it up for a long time. So I'm always happy to have it and let kids play it because it's fun for them to understand and learn. I mean, it's like a piano out of the early 1900s. So
Yeah.
it's old enough and still being functional and something that they can touch and use
And interact with. Yeah.
is important. I love having items that people can utilize.
Yeah. What it it creates the memory.
Right. They remember going and sitting down at the piano and getting to see the keys move without them doing anything. Now the weirdest object, there's a good mix of those. There's some fun ones. Uh we have a dentist office. Basically, whenever a couple dentists retired, we got their tools. Um, and we have a lot of medical stuff too. So any of the medical, I don't have a lot of like medical phobias, like it just in general, but some of the older medical equipment is a little archaic and a little off-putting to think about. So we have a bed out of the maternity ward from one of our old hospitals.
Mhm.
Um, it's a little off-putting.
Yeah.
I have a lot of women that come in and look at the bed and they're like, "Ew, no, 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 no," because it's rough. It's pretty raw metal. There's a leather back for cushioning.
Yeah.
The stirrups are just cold metal again. Like it doesn't look inviting, by any means.
Yeah.
So I
Very
completely understand.
utilitarian.
Yes, very utilitarian. So that one's probably the one that I have the most people react to
Yeah.
coming in. They kind of like shudder a little bit, a little bit looking at it. So
Now,
that one probably is one of the weirdest ones on display that I can think of.
now, isn't the one of the other guys, wasn't he born on that bed?
Yeah, yeah. So James Henry Snyder is the president of the Historical Society. He was born in the Carter Moore Hospital, which was the local hospital in town um, before it closed. But
Yeah.
yeah, he was that. If it's not, I think it should be that bed because I think they only had like one or two beds in the maternity ward.
Yeah.
So you can kind of put that together. If it's one or two beds in maternity ward and he was born in the Carter Moore Hospital,
He's
that
likely.
was it. We have his receipt. His mother kept his receipt from whenever he was born. At the time, it was like $11. He was $11, and that's a steal.
That's a steal there. Awesome. Uh, Anything else that comes to mind?
Oh, there's plenty. So there's a book that one of my other items that I've just found um, from a Miss Pauline was her name, um, and it's an autobiography from her. And she was well known she was from Bowling Green, but well known in Franklin too, um, to run probably the most frequented cat house. We'll call it in Bowling Green. Might be the nicest way to put it.
Yeah,
Um, but her book, it's her autobiography, talking about how she got into the business. It's graphic, to say the least. Um,
yeah,
but it's trimmed in like red velvet, and it just has Pauline's across the front of it. She was, it was cool. It was really funny. Uh, so we have two of those books. We have one normal looking one, and then the one trimmed in red velvet. So the red velvet one's a little special.
yeah.
Uh, but like this place was apparently frequented a lot. Like when they finally closed it, they were tearing down the building. They sold bricks from the building. Just anybody that wanted to buy a brick can buy a brick. $50 a pop for a brick, and they sold out. They,
What?
they ran out of bricks. So it's
Oh,
uh it's funny to me. That one's just a fun. It's just a goofy item that I
yeah.
think is cool. Um, Miss Pauline was apparently a stand-up woman, so everyone liked her in town. A lot of people liked her in town. There's some women that I think had some
Some misgivings.
grievances. Yes,
Yeah. Well, that's understandable.
yes, yeah.
Uh, she sounds like a character, like she was very out there and
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, she didn't give. I think she gave like first names in the book. She gave like names and like if
oh,
not like a exact name, like what position they held, maybe in the city government or like high-ranking army officers would come in, and it was yeah, it was a lot. I didn't know what it was when I first found it, and just kind of opened up the pages to see. I was like, oh, and I closed the.
oh no.
I was like, hey, okay, all right.
I can't unsee that.
Yeah, no, I didn't need that information just like, knocking around because she opened in like the late 40s.
Mm.
So this is like, the generation of some of the old timers in town still. It's like I don't need any of that.
Man, like we've explored some of the brothels here,
Oh yeah.
and some of the brothels in the the Olympic Peninsula.
Okay.
The under we did the underground tour at Port Angeles, uh, probably 7 years ago,
Mm.
and we went through this one place, and they had a window that the madam would stand at and greet the guests as they came up the stairs and take their payment because they didn't trust them not to skip out and not
Run
pay.
off. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Having a window is kind of that's a classy move to greet
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah. What's a local dish that you like?
It's called burgoo. So I don't know if you've had burgoo,
Yeah.
but it's a stew that is pretty distinctly Kentucky. Um, it used to be, and again, the old timers always have the saying it was anything that didn't make it across the road, which is,
Yeah.
neither here nor there. They've obviously classed it up a lot. Um, but it's just I don't really know. I need to find a good recipe because I've only found it in a few restaurants and then a few friends that I know make it. I
Yeah.
don't have a family tradition of burgoo, but I need to find some that's good. But Owensboro in Kentucky, there's a couple barbecue restaurants in Owensboro that I will go there and just eat burgoo. I don't care about their barbecue. I don't care about anything. I will have multiple bowls of burgoo.
Awesome.
I have a buddy that lives in Owensboro, and he came down to visit me. He's like, "You want me to bring you some burgoo?" I was like, "Yeah, whatever they got." And he brought a gallon. Like they sell them in like gallons,
Wow.
and and we ate like half of it. Like the first day he came in, I was like, "This is great." So burgoo is a good local food tradition that's pretty unique. I mean, everyone's got kind of like their unique take on stews and things like
Yeah.
that, but burgoo is Kentucky's go.
It what all goes into it?
That really depends who's making it. It's a
Okay.
lot of meat. It's very meat
Yeah.
heavy.
Yeah.
So it's every almost every type. It was chicken, pork, beef, and then kind of stewed. Now, Owensboro does a little bit differently. Their barbecue tradition in Owensboro is mutton. They also add mutton,
Okay.
and they have that in their burgoo. And I think that's probably one of the parts that I love
Yeah.
their burgoo the most is that. Um, but I mean, it's just however many types of meat. You'll have some vegetables, but not a ton. It's a lot of spices, and then whatever kind of like potatoes, maybe some carrots,
Mm.
and then just kind of and I mean stewed for a long time, and it gets where everything is good and soft and all
All
integrated together. It's the way to go. If you ever see some burgoo on a menu in Kentucky, you got to try it out.
and
It really is. It's whatever meat you like. Because a lot of it was just a way. I mean, it's just a stew. The spices are kind of what's standard,
yeah.
and then whatever meat you catch, whatever you had. Dad was talking about whenever they did some of his, it was squirrel, or it would have rabbit, or it was just whatever they hunted at the time.
Yeah.
So they would prep it up and then put it in the stew with it, and it just kind of keeps going. And it's yeah. So I mean, the meat can vary. That's hard about nailing down burgoo.
Yeah.
Um, but it's more of the spice blend
That's
that keeps it all kind of the same
thing.
burgoo.
All right. Do you have anything you we didn't go over that you'd like to talk about?
I don't think so. I think we've kind of ran a good gambit of discussion. We've gone through a lot of stuff. Yeah. So
Excellent.
I think we've done very good. I mean, I'm not sure what your listener base is like, but if they're ever in the Kentucky area, like come on down and see a lot of our local stuff. Our Simpson County, Franklin's a good little small town. It's got some fun little restaurants and Simpson County Historical Society and
We have a good base of people from weirdly, about 50% of our listenership is from Europe and Germany.
oh wow, cool.
I wouldn't have expected that, but a lot of them, when we did a live stream in Kentucky at
Mhm,
the Confederate, one of the Confederate graveyard
mhm.
areas, and the battleground, uh, a lot of them picked up on that, and they were very interested in that area and how it felt and whatnot. And our experience there was very calm. It was like the battleground itself. We went through, I think it was in Mill Springs.
Okay, yeah.
Um, we went through walking the tour. And we got to where the blacksmith's shop had been, and we sat down at the bench, and all we could hear were birds singing and it the wind was just enough to blow the leaves around because this was November. So uh it was very calm. Like normally, like I'm very sensitive to energies, so normally places like that bother me. But I felt that something had happened there, but it was at peace. And throughout Kentucky, I found like even the really hard historical places where battles had happened, a lot of places actually felt calm. Like they, went through that period, but they've reconciled it. And that's like a lot of people I found that they were at peace with, yes, this is my history. Whether were Confederate or Union, it didn't matter. They were at peace with that past.
That that tracks with what I know about Kentuckians. A lot of the time, as I don't know, as uneducated as people perceive a lot of the South to be, and there are still holdouts here and there, and I'm not making sweeping generalizations, but a lot of the folks that I know, they understand kind of where they are, and what their family did. They know their family history. That is a
Yep.
big thing for us. I mean, it's just nice to do, and it's just a neat way to understand where you've come from and like what you've done, and like what who gave some time or gave their life to let you do that, and who helped establish you. I mean, I've made treks back. So my dad's side of the family is further east. He's from Tompkinsville, or his dad was from Tompkinsville.
Okay.
Uh, so out in like more coal country, eastern Kentucky. I mean, it gets a little poorer the further east you go.
Yeah.
But and at some point he's wanting to take me back too. There's a family cemetery there. That's like three-quarters, if not more, of Bowles's, which is my family. And so it's almost like you said, almost all of the headstones are our family, like of some kind.
Yeah.
So going back and understanding that, taking care of family plots, there's a lot of understanding with our history. Now, again, generalizations. There's some folks that are hesitant here or there, or don't like to talk about whatever.
Yeah.
But did you ever go make your way further east into like eastern parts of Kentucky?
Furthest east we went was Somerset.
Somerset. Okay. So I always heard, um, especially folks that are more sensitive, like you said you are, the Appalachians are an interesting spot to go. Um, they are old. They are
Yeah.
old, 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 old. I mean, there's no fossils in the mountains because they are older than bone.
Yeah.
So I've always heard that that's a spot to check out. So if you're ever around again, I've heard the mountains are an interesting spot to go to.
We we went to Horse Cave, and the energy of that cave is interesting. You can feel how old that land is.
Horse Cave is it's a cool spot. I haven't been down in the cave in years. They used to I used to go there for a folk show or folk life exhibit they did there.
Yeah.
They have like a farm machinery show, and it's a big to do, so everyone kind of shows up, and we do some talks and lectures, and or we used to. Horse Cave's got some rough history. They had a very notable train crash
Hmm.
near Horse Cave that had a lot of chemical leaks, that they are still kind of trying to understand some of the repercussions of today.
Yeah.
They've had some people from that area that have had some lasting health issues that they can kind of attribute to some of that. But
Yeah.
I love Horse Cave. It's a nice small town too.
It
Um,
is.
yeah,
It is.
it's a fun spot.
Um, and then when we get to Somerset, s- w- one of the guys we talked to, Dan Dutton, if he's a an artist and a composer.
Mm-hmm.
So like he's physical art as well as musical, and like he did what they called Stone Man, and uh, he does a lot of stuff with the horn god uh,
Okay.
as a muse for things. So like he did this statue of Pan sitting on a rock out of bronze
Okay.
for
Wow.
for one of the displays he has on the property. And his property has a mound on it, and the feeling at the mound was very active, like stuff moving in and out. But he also had a ton of wild turkeys at the back when we were there too, that were chowing down on some soybeans that
Yeah.
over from the harvest. And but his his land, you could feel the energy of what he works with there. There's like a wild energy there. And for you, being a folklorist, um, how do you find the family histories and family stories uh, are related to the land? How much do you find that?
There's there's a good deal of it, especially like family farms and like passing on the land and kind of who takes ownership of it. Um, but then there's also, and I guess it wouldn't be the land itself, but especially like farther east, there's almost a love of the mountains and a love of the land, but also a sense of, I don't want to say escape, but like, especially with some of the coal mines that have come through, they are destroying a lot of the land.
Yeah,
And so a lot of the people that are there is like, this used to be a spot that people could set up and do a small farm and could stay for a few generations, however long they wanted. But with the
yeah,
coal mines coming through and doing like strip mining and things like that, it's negatively impacted that land to a point that the only thing to do predominantly in Eastern Kentucky and into West Virginia, I mean, a lot of it is you're going to work in a coal mine,
yeah,
like especially in some of these small towns that, I mean, I guess you could work at like a local store, but there's only so many of those jobs open. They always need more coal miners.
yeah,
So, so there's like a love and respect of the land, and then watching it kind of be destroyed with coal mining, but having to work in that field. There's a it's a mixed bag. Like you get so much kind of combined together because they want to keep coal mines because it's the only job they have.
yeah,
They want to keep those, but they also are losing a lot of their nature because of coal mines.
yeah,
So they're trying to there's a balance that I know a lot are trying to strike, and a lot of times they don't have time, money, energy, resources to worry about that. I mean, they are working and then they go home, and
yeah,
so it's a lot. There's a lot tied in with the land, whether it's pro, nature versus like having to work in an organization that is negatively impacting a lot of stuff. Um, but yeah, so there's definitely a lot tied into it that I probably need a few decades more years worth of study to really fully understand. It would have to be like field work in the East, and it's there's a lot
yeah.
there.
Um, over time, you'll probably collect a lot of interesting stuff with the museum. Is
Yeah.
there anything that you'd like to promote?
Um, Honestly, it's just besides visiting our specific museum, everybody go see your small museums. Go look at the tiny museums because the big ones are great. I can't say anything. I mean, I've been to the Smithsonian's and they're cool. They're impactful. They have a lot of really, really important objects in them.
Yeah,
But so do the other smaller museums that are only for, Franklin or a small town close to you. If you have a archives or have a small museum, go check it out because odds are, especially if you're really into it, they're going to show you a lot of behind the scenes stuff because that's what they got. They love doing it. They don't get a lot of people in to check it out. I mean, I know I took you all through our collections and
yeah,
just you get to see stuff back in the back, and it's it's always great. You're going to find people that are very in love with what they do.
yeah.
Um, that really like to have anybody visit. So definitely check out a small museum every now and then, and let them know that you still know they're around
Yeah,
or use them. I mean, like our genealogical collections or anything like that. Like check those out. Go see that. Go see your local libraries. I'm all for the small town. Do your small stuff.
yeah,
But
yeah. Well, small towns get overlooked quite a lot. A lot of them are dying out, and so anytime that you can support your local museum, your local archive, or even just local business, historic and new businesses, do it.
yeah,
And like the little mom and pop shops, they're disappearing. So
yeah.
having the opportunity to support them and keep them around, they're our history a lot of the time.
If
So
you go to a small town, try not to eat at a chain. Try and find a good local restaurant, small coffee shop, whatever you got. Just I still just buy local, just check it out, see what you can.
yeah,
It's getting more and more important to do that.
yeah.
So check out the small stuff. That's always the good message.
All right. Thanks a lot for coming on with us.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for having me. This has been great.
Awesome. Sorry I kept you a little bit long.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. Like I said, we got talking about a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we did. We did. We went over quite a bit. All right. I'm gonna.
Huh. Oh,
uh,
yeah. One more plug that I'd forgotten of is a friend's podcast, Floaties for Krakens. I think I told you about this
Yes.
whenever you were here. If you haven't given it a listen, it's a good time.
All right.
She does like a monster of the week, and gets to talk about monsters with a specialist of some kind, or basically a person gets to pick their favorite monster and talk about them.
Awesome.
So it's a very fun podcast. It kind of ranges from traditional folklore to movies, video games. I'm the newest addition to that podcast. They just did that one, which is funny. I hadn't been on any podcast, and then within these past 2 weeks, I'm now going to be on this one and hers.
Excellent.
So definitely check out Floaty. She's been doing a lot of work. She's from my folklore program. She graduated a couple of years or a year behind me.
Okay.
And she does the Kentucky Folklife Archive as well,
Awesome.
for us.